Hi, it's James from Enso, and today I'm looking at day 5 of Heaven of Code. As before, I've already loaded the text of the puzzle in, the example text, and the connection to my own real values. What we need to do here is look to see when an ingredient exists inside any ranges. So let's first of all have a look at how we can parse the data into a form we can use. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just put it into, going to convert the text into lines. And then I'm going to convert that into a table. And now I'm going to filter the blank rows, filter where the value contains a minus sign, and then I'm going to copy that filter, and this time I'm going to remove the ones which contain a minus sign. I can then split this to columns on the delimiter being a minus, so I'll put in a custom delimiter. And we should now have the ranges. Let's rename the columns. Min, max. Parse the values here as well, so we get them all as numbers. And the last thing we need to do is now join the two data sets together. So we should have a set of ingredient IDs and a set of ranges. Then I want to do a join. I'm going to do a left exclusive join. So I want to get the ones from the left table that are not found in the right. I'm going to use a between join. One of Enso's features is you can do a join between, same as you can in SQL. On the value between the minimum and the maximum. Have a quick check. We've got 1, 8, and that's it. And we actually want to keep the ones where it is in the range. So let's reverse that from a left exclusive to a inner join. And then let's check we've got the right answer. But we now need to make sure we have the distinct because one of them falls into 2 ranges. So we want the distinct elements in there. So I will do a distinct on the value, and now should have the correct answer of 3. Swap over to the real data set. Give it a minute or two to run. That's my answer. And that completes part 1. I'll pause the video while I load up part 2. Okay, I've loaded in part 2. For part 2, we need to find the total number of non-overlapping values. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start and order the ranges. So I'll use a sort function, and I'm going to sort on the min and then the max. And now I have a set of ranges. And what we want to do is scroll our way down. And as we go down, effectively, if a range is not overlapping, we then kind of extend it. So if I go from 10 to 14, I get to the next row and get 12. Well, that's inside there. So my now effective range is 10 to 18. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to access the rows object, which gives me each row as an object. And now I'm going to build a process to see if we can make this work. So let's assume I'm going to skip the first one because that's self-contained. My current value is row 1. And I'm going to turn that to a vector of 2 points. So I've got the 10 and 14. And now I'm going to compare this and see if I can build a function with what happens at row 2. So my first question So first thing I need to do is get the minimum value out. So again, I'll turn it into a vector for simplicity. And now what I'm going to say is it self-contained? So I want to know, is the first value less than the second value or the last value of the current pair? So let's have a look at that. So this is going to give me my new value, and I'm going to say if then else. So if it's this one, then I want to have the first value. So let's actually take this out first, then we can maybe make a few things a bit simpler by plugging this in here. And actually, that was wrong. Sorry, that's a mistake, because I need to say if it's less than the last value, not the first value. And technically, it could also be less than or equal to the last value, and we would still want to extend the range. So if it is contained in the range, then we want the first value. And again, let's break out first and last on these. And if it is contained, not contained, then we take the new first. So that should give us, in this case, that we haven't changed. And now we also need to do the same for work out now if we want to extend the end. But we don't have to do anything on the end, because regardless, the end is either the maximum of the range we were in or the maximum of this. So our new output is just that maxed with this value. And now we can build a new array. So I will build a placeholder first. Start that again. That's not what I meant to do. I'll build a new placeholder, put in the lower end and the upper end. Oops, undo, and let's see. So this should give us 1018, which is what we expect to happen, and that looks promising. And let's try if I put in 0, which doesn't overlap, I should get 1218. And if I put in 2 and 3, I should get 1220. Perfect. That looks like it's doing what I want it to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a reusable function. The function will take a vector of where we are at the moment, and a row of what it needs to process, and it will produce a new vector. So if I do this, and I click the button to make a function, and I will say call that merge pair. Hit refresh to reinitialize it. So we now have our merged pair function working on 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this back to the first value. And now I'm going to run, I want to use a function called running fold. This is the same as the fold function, so we iterate for each point, but instead of it returning the end value, it gives you every value as we go along. So let's plug in our initial function, and then let's also plug in the merge pair function. So I can put a new node saying merge pair and plug that in as my function. And now what we get out is a sequence where we can see we've merged this one into a 10 to 20. And now we can put this back into the input table that we had to start with. So I'll use a set function, pass in the vector, call it merged. Let's have a look at what that's produced. If I expand this out, we've got the rows, and now we've got an array on each row. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand that array. I can use an expand column, and this expands the array to multiple columns. Span merged, And now we've got each row. I now want to filter where the row below is the same number, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an aggregate, and I'm just going to take for each one of these the last value of merged one, or the max value of merged one. So if I do aggregate, group by merge 0, take the max of merged 1, and I think I'll call it merged 1 for easiness. And now I can do an aggregate. I'm going to do an aggregate sum. I'm going to write it as an expression, and I want merged 1 minus merged 0, but I need to add 1 because we want to include both ends of the range. Hopefully 14, which is our target. Let's switch it over to the real data set and see if it works. Huge number, but that is indeed the correct number for my. And that completes part 2.